Everyone who's ever dared to venture beneath Waterdeep knows the name Halaster Blackcloak. But was he truly a madman, or was his genius simply beyond our understanding? We're about to uncover the twisted history of the Mad Mage himself, exploring the darkest secrets of Undermountain and the legacy of its creator. You know the name Halaster Blackcloak, the Mad Mage of Undermountain. But before the legend, before his labyrinthine dungeon, he was just a wizard with a singular vision. This is the story of how that genius turned to madness. Halaster's origins are shrouded in mystery. Some say he was a master mage from a land of powerful wizards. Others whisper that he came from far older, vanished empires. We may never know the truth, but what's clear is that from an early age, Halaster was completely obsessed with magic. He didn't just study spells, he was an innovator, a genius who saw magic not as a set of rules, but as an endless field of possibility. He wanted to break the laws of arcane energy, to experiment with magic in ways no one had ever dared. His ambition was a magnet. As a young mage, he attracted a following of brilliant students, companions who were drawn to his singular intellect and his dangerous desire to push the limits. Among them were a select group who would become known as the Seven. Mages like Jasira Kesselharp, a master of abjuration, and the cold, calculating enchantress Acturia, were joined by the likes of Muriel, a warrior whose love of fighting was matched only by his fascination with augmenting his own strength through magic. These weren't just students, they were partners in a grand magical project, and they would witness and participate in experiments that pushed magic to its absolute limits. This is what brought them to the foot of Mount Waterdeep. Beneath its slopes lay the ancient ruins of the dwarves of Clan Melerkin. While others saw only decay and the dangerous underworld, Halaster saw a blank canvas, a perfect place to conduct his grand magical project far from the prying eyes of the surface world. But he didn't just find a dungeon. He conquered it. Using a legion of summoned fiends and outsiders, Halaster and his apprentices waged a brutal, bloody war against the Drow and Duergar, who had claimed these ruins, a conflict that lasted for years. It was in this brutal subterranean crusade that Halaster's mind began to unravel. His sanity wasn't destroyed by a single spell or curse. Instead, it was slowly eroded by his obsession with a powerful, chaotic, magical force in the heart of the mountain known as the Knot in the Weave. This wasn't just a metaphor. It was a physical wound in the very fabric of magic, a nexus of untamed magical energy that radiated pure chaos. For years, Halaster was consumed by a maddening desire to study it, to understand its power and to channel its raw, unpredictable energy into his creation. As he poured his magic and his will into transforming the old dwarven halls, he didn't realize the knot was changing him in return. The endless summoning, the constant conflict, and the chaotic magical energy of the knot began to bind his soul to Undermountain itself, turning the dungeon into a physical reflection of his fracturing mind. He became a genius, but a genius whose mind was so vast, so entangled with a place of pure chaos, that the line between brilliance and madness forever blurred. And that's where the story begins, with a wizard who, in his quest to conquer a mountain, ultimately became an inextricable part of its madness. Halaster's vision had grown far beyond a simple wizard's lair. He was crafting an entire underground kingdom, a magical testing ground where he could push the boundaries of magic on a cosmic scale. He wasn't just shaping a single dungeon, he was building a living ecosystem designed with an inscrutable purpose known only to him. With a word, he would create vast chasms or fill them in. He used immense magical power not just to move rock, but to make the very stone itself pliable, shaping its essence to his whims. This was a project so vast, so utterly ambitious, that it could only exist in a place as secluded and dangerous as the Underhalls. He populated the depths with strange and terrible creatures, not just as guardians, but as magical experiments. He wasn't content with just summoning monsters, he was creating them. He fashioned bizarre beholder golems, fused intellect devourers with powerful fiends, and bred monstrous new species in the dark. He even wove permanent planar gates and portals into the very walls, linking the dungeon to other worlds and turning it into a collector's showcase of otherworldly monstrosities. Adventurers who stumbled into Undermountain quickly learned it was more than a place to explore. It was a place that explored them, a masterwork of magical engineering that reshaped their fate with every step they took. As his apprentices weren't immune to the twisted designs, the seven initially aided him in building these halls, learning secrets of magic few mortals could comprehend. But as the dungeon grew, so did the danger, and so did Halaster's obsession. The seven began to show signs of their master's madness. The warrior Muriel became obsessed with augmenting his strength through magic and was eventually twisted into a monstrous centaur with a scorpion's tail, a loyal but grotesque guardian of the upper levels. The cruel enchantress Actura began experimenting with polymorphing others to suit her dark whims, filling her halls with twisted, sad creatures. Others of the seven simply vanished entirely, swallowed by the labyrinth they themselves helped build, their magic and will forever tied to the very halls they constructed. Halaster's mind was a mirror of this creation. Those who entered the depths reported strange phenomena, hallways that seemed to bend and shift when unobserved, rooms that stacked impossibly upon one another, and whispers that came from nowhere. As he poured his magic into molding Undermountain, the dungeon absorbed fragments of his sanity, and its shifting, chaotic nature became a twisted reflection of his own mind. He was no longer just a wizard. He had become a force of nature, inseparable from his creation. Even as Waterdeep thrived, unaware on the surface, for the city would never be the same, as the dungeon and its mad master were always watching, always shaping the destiny of those foolish or brave enough to venture below. By now, Halaster Blackcloak had become far more than just a man. He was a legend, a mystery spoken in of hushed tones by adventurers and scholars alike. Over the decades, his story spread. The game designers began to bring him to life across multiple editions of D&D. In 2nd edition, the Ruins of Undermountain's box sets gave players their first real glimpse into the dungeon's massive scale and lethal danger. Halaster was present mostly as an unseen, shadowy architect whose traps, magic anomalies, and monstrous creations felt less like random encounters and more like a taunting game meant to test the adventurer's worth. You never met him directly, but you felt his chaotic presence in every twisting corridor and every sudden rockfall. His influence was everywhere, a phantom hand twisting the very dungeon around you. In 3rd edition, expanding on this in Expedition to Undermountain, here, Halaster's influence lingered even after his apparent death. His soul was, and will, so embedded in the dungeon itself that he simply couldn't be killed. Adventurers encountered echoes of his magic, remnants of his bizarre experiments, and messages that seemed, well, almost taunting. Proof that even without a physical body, Halaster's reach extended far below the surface. He wasn't just a powerful wizard, he had become a force of nature, a living part of the dungeon's magical architecture. Over the years, novels added more depth to his character. Stories like Waterdeep, Blackstaff, and Elminster and Hell showed his rivalries with some of Faerun's most famous figures. His constant chaotic rivalry with Khelben Arunsun of Waterdeep was a long-running saga. He had an uneasy, chaotic relationship with Elminster, one of the most powerful wizards in the realms, and his tenuous relationship with Mistress Chosen highlighted the complexity of his character. He wasn't just a villain, he was a force of magical innovation, ambition, and deep obsession who had his own complex motives. In the novel Waterdeep, you see how Halaster and Undermountain are intertwined with the city above. Even when he's unseen, he's shaping events in ways mortals can't even imagine. You get this sense that everything's happening on the streets has a shadow beneath it, and that shadow is him. Then in the novel Blackstaff, we see Halaster in a whole new light. Here, he's not just a mysterious dungeon master, he's a schemer, a strategist, someone who plans and can challenge even the most powerful of wizards. The story shows us the danger of his obsession, but also the brilliance that makes him so fascinating. And in Elminster and Hell, Halaster comes across as both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Even Elminster, one of the most powerful and experienced wizards in the realms, treats him with caution. You start to realize that Halaster isn't just playing with monsters or traps. He's testing wits, pushing those boundaries, and constantly experimenting, even with other powerful spellcasters. Across all of these novels, one thing is clear. Halaster isn't just a mad mage hiding underground. He's a thinking, scheming mind, one whose influence stretches far beyond the walls of Undermountain into the heart of Waterdeep itself. 5th edition brought him fully into focus in Waterdeep Dungeon of the Mad Mage. Here, players can confront Halaster directly, though he remains as unpredictable and dangerous as ever. He doesn't just wait for adventurers. He actively toys with them, manipulates events, and bends reality to his whims, often appearing to give strange advice or deliver a riddle before disappearing again. Undermountain, more than ever, feels like a living, breathing extension of his mind, and Halaster as its chaotic, unpredictable dungeon master. Across every edition, Halaster's story is consistent, a wizard of unmatched brilliance, a mind so far beyond ordinary comprehension that even his closest apprentices struggled to understand him, and a dungeon that reflects both his genius and his obsession. Players who face him or his creation encounter not just a test of skill, but a glimpse into the mind of one of Faerun's most extraordinary and terrifying figures. One of the most fascinating pieces of Halaster's story is his rivalry with Khelben and Arunsun, the Blackstaff of Waterdeep. These two wizards couldn't have been more different in how they used their power. Khelben stood as a protector. His magic, his schemes, even his harsh decisions were all rooted in a desire to safeguard Waterdeep and the realms. Halaster, on the other hand, well, he turned inward. His focus was on experimentation, pushing those boundaries and feeding his own endless curiosity, no matter the cost. Their conflict wasn't just fireballs in the night sky against each other. More often, it was a clash of philosophies. Khelben saw Halaster's work as reckless, dangerous to both Waterdeep and the wider world. Halaster saw Khelben as short-sighted, too bound by duty to truly grasp the possibilities of magic. But here's what makes their rivalry so compelling. It wasn't all hatred. There was a kind of grudging respect between them. Khelben acknowledged Halaster's brilliance, even if he couldn't condone it. And Halaster, for all his madness, seemed to recognize that Khelben as a worthy opponent, a mind sharp enough to push back against his own. That tension between them, order versus chaos, protector versus the experimenter, added a very human dimension to Halaster's story. He wasn't just some isolated mad mage, he was part of a larger struggle among Faerun's greatest spellcasters, and his rivalry with the Blackstaff left ripples in Waterdeep's history that can still be felt centuries later. Halaster Blackcloak may have been a genius, but he wasn't alone when he first came to the caverns that became Undermountain. He did bring with him 7 apprentices, wizards who followed him with the promise of learning magic beyond anything taught in the open world. But Halaster's path was, of course, never stable, and his apprentices soon found themselves caught in the pull of his obsessions. What would have been a circle of students became a cautionary tale. The first famous of them is Arcturia. Remembered for her terrifying work in transformation magic, she pushed her experiments into flesh warping, fusing mortals and monsters together in grotesque hybrids. Even today, she still lurks in Undermountain, carrying on those twisted studies centuries after her master first guided her hand. But of course she wasn't the only one. Trobiand, the metal mage, turned his focus toward constructs and machinery, building powerful golems and magical engines in the depths. His work, well, it still echoes through the dungeon's halls. These, where adventurers, well, they stumbled across his creations long after his disappearance. Then there was Muriel, once a skilled warrior and mage, obsessed with remaking himself. He used his magic to graft a monstrous scorpion's body to his own, becoming the creature known as Muriel the Misshapen. His fate is perhaps the clearest example of how Halaster's influence could twist brilliance into horror. Other apprentices scattered, some vanishing entirely into the dark magic of the dungeon, others turning on one another in jealous rivalries. In every case, what tied them together was the way Halaster encouraged their descent. He didn't stop them. He pushed them. He made Undermountain a breeding ground for unchecked ambition, where morality was stripped away in the pursuit of magical discovery. Even now, the pieces of his apprentices remain, their wards, their constructs, their monsters, and sometimes even the apprentices themselves. They still haunt these endless tunnels. Through them, Halaster's legacy spreads wider than his own hand. His apprentices became reflections of his madness, proof that the genius and obsession that defined this Mad Mage were just as infectious as they were destructive on their own. Now, when we talk about Halaster, it's easy to focus only on the dungeon, but we can't forget the city that grew above him, Waterdeep, the City of Splendors. For centuries, Halaster's story and Waterdeep's history have been tangled together in ways most citizens don't even realize. The average Waterdavian doesn't think about Halaster on their way to the market, but his presence is always there, lurking beneath their feet. The endless stream of adventurers heading into Undermountain that has shaped the city's culture, economy, and even its legends. Inns and taverns profit from would-be heroes, merchants sell gear for delvers, and entire neighborhoods thrive on the flow of treasure pulled up from those depths. Without Halaster, Waterdeep might not have become the adventurer's capital it is today. But there's also fear. Rumors of monsters slipping out of Undermountain, of magical surges shaking the city, of Halaster himself appearing in flashes of madness. These stories haunt Waterdeep like a shadow. The lords of Waterdeep have always treated the dungeon as both a curse and as a resource. Seal it off and you lose a powerful lure for adventurers and the wealth they bring. Leave it open and you risk Halaster's chaos spilling into the streets. What makes this relationship unique is that Halaster doesn't rule Waterdeep in any way, but he still influences it. He's not sitting in Castle Waterdeep with a crown. He's beneath the city, reshaping its destiny, without ever needing to show his face. Every new band of adventurers who heads down into the yawning portal owes their chance to the Mad Mage's design. Every story of glory or horror that comes crawling back up to the surface ties Waterdeep's name to his. In this way, Waterdeep is as much Halaster's stage as Undermountain itself. The city thrives on the stories born in his dungeon, even as it dreads the consequences of living above a mind like his. And it's part of why his legend endures, not just as a myth or master of a dungeon, but as the hidden architect of a city's culture and its myth. Blackcloak's story spans centuries, but his influence is far from over. His magic, his experiments, and his very presence have so thoroughly saturated Undermountain that he's become an essential part of it. He's survived assassination attempts, battles with powerful wizards, and even his own experiments gone wrong. Not just because he's an unparalleled master of magic, but because he has literally woven his own soul into the dungeon. The dungeon's life force is his life force. He isn't just living in Undermountain, he basically is Undermountain, a constant dangerous force that shapes the fate of anyone who ventures below. This unique form of immortality raises a profound question. Was Halaster truly insane, or was he simply operating on a scale beyond mortal understanding? Wizards and scholars have debated this for centuries. Some will tell you he's completely unhinged, a madman whose obsession with power twisted his mind beyond recognition. They'll point to his bizarre games, his cruel pranks, and his utterly chaotic nature. They believe he lost touch with reality long ago and now lives in a world of his own making, far removed from the concerns of mortals. But others believe he's a genius whose vision is just too expansive for ordinary minds to grasp. To them, the shifting corridors, the impossible rooms, and the magical anomalies are not a sign of madness. Instead, they are the workings of a mind that has transcended normal magic and physics. They see a wizard who, in his pursuit of ultimate magical knowledge, found a reality so complex and vast that when what we would call insanity is simply the byproduct of a mind operating on another plane of existence? Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between? A perilous edge where genius and obsession finally meet? His legacy is felt not just in the dungeon itself, but in the entire city of Waterdeep. His influence is subtle yet profound, from the myths that inspire explorers to descend into Undermountain to the city's shadowed underbelly, where powerful guilds fear his name. He isn't just a wizard. He is a symbol of ambition, brilliance, and the dangerous pursuit of power. He's a living reminder that true mastery, well, that comes at a price. Centuries later, Halaster Blackcloak continues to loom large in the mind of Faerun's people. He remains a powerful figure, a legend that feels as alive and unpredictable today as he did when he first descended into, beneath Mount Waterdeep. His is a story that, like Undermountain itself, is never truly finished. So that's the story of Halaster Blackcloak, a wizard who started with a brilliant vision and ended up a living legend. His genius and madness forever etched into the very stones of Undermountain beneath Waterdeep. He's more than just a boss at the end of a dungeon. He's a profound mystery, a living metaphor for the dangerous pursuit of power and the endless secrets waiting in the world of Dungeons & Dragons. So, if you enjoyed this deep dive into one of Faerun's greatest figures, be sure to leave a comment below, like, subscribe, and tell me which legendary character you would like to explore next. Someone maybe I haven't even thought of yet. I have a few on the line coming down. I plan on expanding on a little bit more, but I'm nothing set in stone just yet, so your suggestions are greatly appreciated. This is James from the Dungeon Puffin. Thanks for watching, guys. Later.